Andrew T. Miles. How you doing, man?
Pretty good, and you?
I'm doing good. You're still all scrubbed up.
I thought about changing my shirt, but I was like, whatever.
Have you talked about what you've done or what you do?
So on the podcast, I don't think
and
I have.
have done
Right.
in the podcast before. Have you brought that up? I can't remember.
What my job is?
Maybe. Yeah. If you want to, you can.
Yeah, sure.
Because you're scrubbed up.
Yep. So I am a cytologist, formerly known as cytotechnologist. There's a name change to my industry. So what we do, as you know, the prefix cyto tells you, is that we look at cells. So we're the ones in the lab who look at various kinds of cell samples to help doctors look for cancer. So most people have not heard the word cytology or cytologist or cytotechnologist, but they know of a little bit of our work if they don't know the name. So most people know that a pap smear gets sent to the lab. They don't know that it goes to a cytologist. So we don't just do pap smears. We do various other kind of cell samples from any part of the body, lymph nodes, lung, liver. They find a mass somewhere else, like your leg, your arm, neck mass, whatever. Because there's times when you get called by radiology, such as CAT scan ultrasound, or also endoscopy, that department, or other clinicians who will stick a needle into a mass to find out what the nature of that mass is. And then they'll pull some cells out of that. We make smears, let them know what's going on. And so we play a key role in early detection of various cancers. But even if we can't find something early, at least we've given them a diagnosis, so that way the doctor can, move forward with treatment. And the sooner, they'll have an answer, even if it's something that they can't do much with. Because it's one thing to have the thing, but it's a whole other thing to finally find out what it is.
Sure. Yeah. And power to you, man.
Thank you.
I very much appreciate what you do, being someone that is, I could faint talking about this, FYI. Like, I'm like that squeamish.
Okay.
But as a benefit in society for myself, I get all the benefit from folks like yourself that do these things for us, and it's a beautiful thing.
I love what I do.
When you were a kid, did you have a microscope? Did you get one to play with as a kid?
I did get a microscope when I was about 9 or 10 years old. I didn't know back then what cytology was. I didn't even know.
Of course not. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Most people that hear about it either much later in life, whether in college or after college. I heard about it in high school. So, yeah. I did have a microscope when I was 10 years old.
You knew you wanted to do it then?
Well, back then when I was really young, I was about 8 years old when I knew that I wanted to be in science and medicine in some way. So the sciences has always been a lifelong pattern with me. But then as I got older, into high school, for example, that's when the time came to start thinking about what I'm going to do with the next phase of my life. So I knew I was going to go to college. Just didn't know exactly what I was going to do, because initially I was like, okay, I have interest in music, I have interest in science, I have interest in Spanish as well, because I did pretty well with that in high school, my junior and senior years, and in cooking as well. But then cooking was the first thing off my list, because as much as I do enjoy cooking, practically, and as far as work-life balance goes, you don't get good work-life balance as a chef. Long hours and whatnot. And I'd worked in the kitchen of my church as a summer job for a few years before I turned 18. And I was like, okay, I don't want to do this for a long-term career. It's best to have that stay as a hobby. Same with the music, because you don't get steady work in the music industry unless you're some world famous pop star. Not everybody gets to be Taylor Swift. Some very talented people don't get to have a musical career, which is sad. You'd think that as someone is really talented, they should be rewarded with a career. That is not how it goes all the time. So that was the next thing off my list. But I was like, oh yeah, I also have interest in science and medicine. But what specifically am I going to do in that? So medicine is what I eventually zeroed in on, but I didn't want to be a doctor, didn't want to be a nurse. Again, back to work-life balance. I still wanted to have a life after coming out of work. I zeroed in on the lab, and then I thought about cytology. because I've had people in my family who've had cancer and died of cancer. I've also really enjoyed microscopes from a very early age. So I also like the idea of understanding how disease process evolves from the lowest level of biological organization, which would be the cell, on up. And I've always had a good sharp eye for detail, so that's helpful for microscopy, being able to detect subtle changes and subtle appearances of cells, because that'll tell you that something's going on.
How do you approach music, do you think, with your scientist perspective? Does that bleed in ever?
I don't think so. It's just, they say left brain, right brain, so just different aspects of me. So my scientific aspect, I'm very logical. I've always been a very logical thinker, even when I was very young. It's like when stuff doesn't make sense to me, I want to know why that is the way it is. I've always been about answering why. Why are things the way they are? And when someone tells me to do something and it doesn't make sense, I'm not going to just go along with it. I'm not going to just nod my head and just follow blindly. Because if it doesn't make sense to me, or if I don't think it's right, I'm not going to just go along with that. So yeah, I've always wanted to know why things are the way they are. I've always had an investigative mind, and that's what led me into my career field. And as far as creativity goes, I'm also a little bit of it kind of ties back to what I said before, a little bit of a rule breaker in the sense that I'm not going to just follow an instruction just for the sake of it being an instruction. I connect to purpose. So every now and then I like to just create something that, is a little bit off the wall or whatever, not for the sake of it being off the wall. I just paint with sound what's inside of me. And that's partly why I don't think I can make a long-term career to being a musician, because of the fact that some stuff I write tends to blur the lines of genre and to make people scratch their heads like, WTF? And yeah, I'm just going to do me, and yep.
I respect that, and I get it. And it is harder to market.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's those aspects that make art interesting to me.
I believe so too, because I'm with other artists too. I'm always drawn to the unusual. I'm drawn to stuff that's weird, stuff that makes you think, stuff that makes you like, what is this? Stuff that the underexposed would be like, ew, let's get the Pepto-Bismol. Because even when I was very young, I was often made fun of for being into jazz. I was also made fun of for being
we talked about this. Yeah.
For being a black man who was not into hip hop.
Like Harlem Jazz is one of my favorite pieces of black music, or any music ever of all time, and that predates hip hop by a long shot. Right?
Exactly.
Like, right at the birth of music,
and that's what these kids didn't understand way back then. They had this idea of like jazz is elevator music, and they certainly don't know the history.
No.
Exactly.
No, for sure.
So that further undercuts their argument.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever listened to Guru? Do you know Guru?
I don't think so. Why does it sound vaguely
He's in a rap hip hop group called Gangstar, which is from like the early 90s.
Okay, Guru does sound vaguely familiar since you said the early 90s, because I used to watch The Box. Remember that channel a long time ago?
No.
Okay.
What was it?
It was called The Box. Music television, you control. That was their slogan. So every song that was in their catalog had a 3-digit code in front of it or associated with it. And it's called Music Television You Control because people would call into the line and request a song be played. And then that also explains why there'd be long stretches of time where you wouldn't have anything going on, but just the catalog cycling over and over again because no one's calling in. Maybe that's what also did the network in, but yes.
I never heard of that. That's cool, though. Mm-hmm. And Gangstar came up on that?
Guru is one.
Oh, Guru did?
That's how I remember him.
Guru has a series called Jazzmatazz.
Oh.
And he had jazz musicians play, I believe, live, and he rapped over it.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's one of my favorite hip hop. Like, I love Guru, but like one of my favorite series of hip hop ever. Should definitely check it out.
Sounds good. Okay.
Yeah, the most popular song I think is "Loungin'," which is like gives a good vibe for it. Like if you listen to that, you get the vibe. It's cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, being an artist and making your own decisions about what you want to be, I think is a weird line to cross when you're not broken out yet, because in some ways it could quote unquote break you, right? Like before you're even made. But at the same time, in hindsight, it will make you. Like like all great artists, like no great artist that hasn't been individual and has broken the boundaries will really be added to the canon of legendary, right? You have to do something that's like, would Herbie Hancock, this is a good question for you because I'm not the jazz guy, right? But like, would Herbie Hancock be renowned as he is without headhunters? I don't think so. I think he'd just be a jazz pianist. If and like the projects of that era, right? Like, but headhunters is the biggest one, right? But like crossing over in that way opened up people to knowing him as more than just straight jazz, right?
Yeah,
Like
he was one to break the boundaries. He crossed over to like into fusion because in the 70s, that's the late 60s and early 70s, that's what became popular. Mixing jazz with elements of rock and funk and world music and whatnot. So Herbie was big on that when that was coming up because he came up out of Miles Davis's groups. He was his pianist for a little while, and then after a while, he went on his own, started releasing some albums under like straight ahead jazz, like piano trio format, maybe added a horn or two here or there. And then later on, he went into the funkier stuff, like with Headhunters Band, also his own releases, like Sextant was one. There's a few other ones. I wish I remembered the names of the albums he did, but
I
yes,
should know more of them. I don't.
I know
either.
his songs more than I know the albums. Like actual proof is the one particularly funky number of his. There's that one. Hang up your hang ups. He did something with this group called M1Dishi. That was kind of fusiony as well, and so forth. Yeah, he was quite the creator. I've seen him in concert once.
Really?
Yes.
I've been meaning to see him. I haven't been able to yet.
Mm-hmm.
I've just been lazy, I guess, where he isn't, hasn't come up. But I do love Herbie Hancock. I've listened to a few of his albums when he was with Miles Davis, a few of their performances when he was playing with him, and then I've listened to a few from the funk era, but I haven't gotten much deeper than that. But I appreciate him for who he is, and I could get into him. Miles Davis is another one. He's like, of course, one of the biggest jazz musicians of all time.
Yep.
But at the same time, I think that, and you might know more than this than I do, because I only have really elementary jazz knowledge, and then the jazz knowledge I do have was through the lens of a drummer more than anything else. But like, which would be why I know Headhunters pretty well, right? Like, it's a great drum album. I wish I knew the drummer on that album.
I didn't know you also played drums.
Yeah, that was my first instrument. So all of my music foundation comes from, like, I can't read notes of music without like every good boy deserves fudge level, like finding it. But I could sight read percussion, the rhythm of it, like that's what I'm trained in. I played drums from 4th grade to the end of college, but in the beginning of college, I didn't major in drums. I majored in guitar. I switched to guitar then. But that's why I end up liking very percussive guitarists like Mississippi John Hurt or like
Or
Delta
Evan,
Blues, where they're doing,
or
Evan. I can really appreciate Evan McClosey's playing.
Mm-hmm.
I can't play like that personally, but I can very much appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
And piano, right? Like I do hear when I'm playing guitar, there's an element of piano in there too, because it's a percussion instrument, right? Like that's a little more home to me than guitar. I played marimba before I played guitar. That's my background. So I did do a lot of like jazz band and things like that in high school, and all of that was through the lens of being a drummer.
I try to imagine, the inner drummer in me as I play piano as well, because like when I compose, of course I'm often solo, so I have to be the whole band in one: pianist as lead, bassist, so left hand, and drummer, like adding some percussive-ish elements as I'm going along. So
yeah, and I'll try to do the same with guitar, right? And you can when you're exactly the same way. And that's why I would say I approach it similar to piano, because it's like you have the pedal on the piano, right? The dampen pedal, which it makes everything percussive, right?
It has this sort of like not echoing effect, but it like holds stuff out for a little bit to create a certain effect when you use the sustain pedal.
I'm talking about when you use the sustain pedal, but when you let it go is the thing that's important for me when I'm playing piano.
Okay, yeah.
Because if you're going like ding,
right,
ding,
right, you're not gonna hold it forever, but yeah,
the rests are the important part for me, and it's the same on guitar. That's why I don't have it. It's upstairs, but that's why I like the hollow body guitars, because they resonate really well. But when you tell them to stop, they stop, like on a dime. Yeah, but anyway, Miles Davis is what I was saying is he's a similar artist where he seems to be at the nexus of multiple subgenres of jazz, right? Where it's like the reason that he's Miles Davis in hindsight isn't just because of his bebop era or his kind of blue stuff. Like you have to bring in Bitches Brew too, and like the fusion stuff that follows, right? And that's why that was my original point. Like it's like a fine line, because it's like some folks won't end up like you're only the Beatles because you do that too, right? Like it's not like I'm not going to name names,
be on the pulse of what's going on as time goes on. You have to be reinventing and evolving as time goes on. Otherwise, you stagnate.
Yeah, exactly. And you make yourself more interesting, and your portfolio becomes something that is broader and more descriptive of your life, which shouldn't be just brought into little pieces. And I think this is the perfect segue to talk about your self-portrait series, right? Because it's that to some degree, right?
So that whole thing began in 2008. So I went to Fairleigh Dickinson University, and they had some piano rooms in their in the Dreyfus building of their campus. So that's where the theater program was, and the music classes were, and so forth. Some other stuff would take place in some of our classrooms, but yeah, that's where their theater was.
You did theater and music when you were in school as your electives and stuff?
I didn't do theater. I did have a music history elective my junior year, but my freshman year is when I found those piano rooms, and you could just go in there and stay in there for as long as you wanted to.
Nice.
But now, as an alumnus, when I visited the campus every now and then for certain events, that has been done away with. You have to sign something.
Oh, really?
So yeah, back then when you didn't have that process, I would just go in there in my free time and just play. And some point in my sophomore year, I discovered that my laptop could record stuff. It had a built-in microphone. And I was like, oh, it actually works pretty well. It's not fuzzy. So I brought it with me to one of these piano rooms to record myself just doing some random solo improv. And I called it Self-Portrait, kind of inspired by episodes of Mary McPartlin's Piano Jazz that I listened to for years. So I first heard about that A long time ago, like probably my early teens or mid-teens, by various recordings that Mary McPartland would do of her radio show called Piano Jazz. She's had many people on her show over the years, some legends, some newer ones, so forth. And when I found it on WBGO, so a well-known jazz radio station um, based in Newark, New Jersey, I would listen to it, and then I found out what days of the week it comes on. It's like, okay, cool, tuned in. And then there's some episodes that she did where she had a guest on, and then she would say, can I do a musical self-portrait of you? They're like, sure. So she would do that sometimes. She wouldn't do it for every single artist, but she started doing it. I forgot who her first one she did it with was, but when she started it, I was like, that's pretty cool. Like she hadn't heard of it before. She hadn't heard it before. She just composed it right on the spot. Did some sort of musical painting of who the artist was, and they came out really well. It's like, that's a pretty cool idea. Why don't I do a musical self-portrait, since she's doing musical portraits of whoever those artists were. It's a little bit similar to what she would also do on some other episodes, which would be a free piece, which is a piano duet of what she would a piano duet with her hosts. A lot of her guests were pianists, but not all of them were. Some of them were saxophonists, some of them were singers, and some were other instrumentalists and so forth. But yes, oftentimes she would do her free pieces as piano duets. And yeah, I want to do that someday too. But yeah, that's how the self-portrait series began. I started by doing that. I was in one of those piano rooms at FDU, and then I just played to my heart's content. And I was sort of like playing and then letting the song take me where it would go. Not really forcing it to exist. I would just start somewhere and then play some things like expand on a theme. And then if it became something, okay, cool. If it didn't, fine. But I liked what it turned into, and it became like this 11-minute plus piece. And then on went with the rest of the series. It's now 25 episodes deep.
That's awesome. What would you like to do someday? You were saying I'd like to do that someday. Would you like to be on
a piano
show?
duet? So Mary,
a piano duet.
Yes.
Okay.
Mary McPartland is no longer with us. I think she died in 2012. She was 95 years old. I was like, oh man, never got to meet her in concert, but oh well. But yeah.
Well, that's what I was asking. If you'd like to, because I have those types of things that happen to me, and I'm an old soul, so a lot of my heroes are always dying, and you're like, damn.
Yep. Because
wish I could have met them.
Somebody else died a few years ago that I was really hoping to meet. So it was one day I was driving home from work, and before really driving all the way home, I was in New Brunswick one day, and I pulled over to text Harrison a link to an online open mic that a friend had sent me, because he was going to start hosting an online open mic during lockdown era. And then I texted that to him. So I pulled over first, texted to him, and then as I get back on the road again, Harrison texts me saying, thanks. And by the way, RIP Chick Corea. It's like, what? No!
Oh, no. Yeah, I know that's one of the people that was a huge influence on you.
Yes. Never got to see him in concert. He died during COVID. He died of a rare form of cancer. He was 80 years old, I believe.
That sucks.
Yep. But yeah, all we can do now is just celebrate his life and celebrate his wonderful music and so forth.
Yeah, totally. And same thing with Marion McPartland, right? Like with that show. You sent me the one episode I listened to with Makoto Ozone.
Yes.
Is it? And I could tell she was pretty old. I actually didn't know how old she was on that episode, but I was like, it sounds like she's been doing that. She was like, I haven't had you on here in 18 years. I'm like, how long have you been doing this show?
Because you can tell, like, when she does her intro, like, hi, I'm Mary McPartland. Sound like she's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 at that point.
No, exactly, but which I respect the shit out of, because it's like, that's how you know somebody's doing their life's work, One thing I loved. Go.
Yeah, earlier we talked about numbers being skipped because in my series, before I got to the third, because I started titling them by their ordinal number for a little while. The second chapter of this series, I say that I played that live in person at open mic at FDU, and then next time I recorded an episode, I was like, I'll just do the third, and then after a while, the fifth had been skipped, but then after the episode that I called the 0th is when everything got back on track after a while.
Yeah, it's tough. You're a number or two, I know. Like you keep track of a lot of counting, and yeah, this has happened to me a bunch. I don't say the number of the episode in the beginning of the show anymore, which I did at the beginning,
right?
Which I really liked doing just to keep track myself, but the order could change, or there could be an episode that gets deleted before it even comes out, and it's like painful during editing to be like, welcome to the Rich Soni Podcast, this is episode 38. Like, you have to cut that part out.
Yes.
So, like, I don't say what episode it is anymore. The order could change. I could say the date.
You could say the date.
I could say the date of the interview. That's how I name everything in the file structure.
And that's what you could probably do henceforth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, one of the things I liked about the piano jazz series that I wanted to say to you that I don't do, but I should do a better job of, she like talked to the guy to Makoto Ozone for like 2 minutes, and she was like, all right, well, I have a lot of things I want to say to you, but why don't you play a song? That's what people listen to this for. And I'm going to say the same thing to you.
Sure.
Like, we've been talking for like a half hour. You should probably play one of your songs so people get a chance to hear what you have to show.
Mm-hmm. So, in an earlier episode of your series, you had Ray Salerno on. And right. Ray had mentioned something called The Bells. So then,
The Bells.
Yes, yeah. I have a song called Soliloquy. Exactly, Soliloquy of the Bells, which has nothing to do with Edgar Allan Poe whatsoever. This came about because when I used to live in North Jersey, I lived a few doors down from a church. And what used to happen is that every now and then, some chimes would go off. It would just be playing chimes to its heart's content, not even addressing a listener. It's just playing because it's playing. And after a while, I was like, you know what? That's kind of like my soul when I play piano. Just find a piano, just play to my heart's consent. My musical soliloquy of the bells, in a sense. Because I wanted to play something, when I was composing, I wanted to compose something that reminded me of like chimes, bells, and me alone doing my thing, my own soliloquy in that way. So Soliloquy of the Bells is what came out of that.
I love that. Great concept. Thanks. All right, let's hear it. Nice.
Thank you.
Great. I loved. I mean, even speaking of what we were talking about before, with the use of the stopping of the sustain, you were doing that a few times there. For an effect.
Yeah.
So yeah, you were saying that the self-portrait series, and this one specifically, you were aiming to create something that would be a metaphorical equivalent of listening to these bells ringing for no one.
Well, the Soliloquy of the Bells, that wasn't exactly part of the series. It was more like...
oh, it's just a separate...
Yeah, because, I mean, I'm on this podcast, and like sort of a nod to Rachel Lerner from the previous episode. I was like, oh, he's mentioned the bells, and so yeah, that happened, and I was like, I need to bring this out here to sort of draw a through line to what he said in that episode. So I was like, yep.
How do you decide when you're playing that? Or do you just let it flow through? Like what you imagine those bells to be? How far do you take that metaphor, is what I'm trying to say, is how far do you take that to be sounding like bells or feeling like bells? Where did you draw that line when you made that decision for the piece?
Yeah, I guess it's just whatever was in my mind. Is like, I want to create something that just sounds like bells, and I was trying to like create that ding ding dong, like that sort of like.
Yeah. That's what I was kind of asking about the sustain, right? Because it's a very sustainy piece, which I felt like it was felt like bells.
Yeah, because it carries, you know, like how like the bells of a church will like carry a distance like that. And especially toward the end, when I had that staccato line. Yeah.
Of course. And then, playing that through into the sustain, it really did kind of echo through. Although, it hit me harder than just like random bells from a church.
Nice.
Like if those were the bells from the church, that would be annoying if I was trying to like sleep, right?
Yeah, so that's why they didn't play at night. So after a while, I noticed that they weren't playing anymore. It's like, what happened? Did they break? Did they warp? Or what happened? Because I remember a couple summer days when those chimes would go off, they would sound like something had happened. Like, it's been a series of 90 and 100-degree days out here. Did something happen to the bells where they sound like they've been smoking something? Because they sound like all twangy and whatnot. Like, what happened? But some years passed where I didn't hear them anymore. So like, what's going on? And then I found out that some churches don't have actual bells. They have some sort of electronic thing going on to make it sound like that's going on. It's on a timer, and they wouldn't go off at night for obvious reasons. They try not to wake people up. So I was like, okay. I mean, I wish it was the real thing, but it still sounded nice. And of course, it was good enough to inspire a song out of me too.
Sure. I mean, I've been inspired by, I don't know if I've written songs based on it, but I've been inspired by those types of bells before. I went to school my first semester at Rochester Institute of Technology, and there they have the Beatles songs as the church bells. Like they're like bells, but they're the tunes of Eleanor Rigby or something.
Oh, nice.
I forget what they are now. Which kind of sounded, it was cool, but it was a little grim, too, because it's like a Beatles song and, like, coming out of a church bell. But I also thought they were real, and then somebody was like, no, like, they're just a recording of some other bells. Whatever. I don't know. I'm too optimistic, because when you go in a church, it's a real organ, you know? Have you ever played an organ? Do you play real organ ever?
I played an organ a while ago to accompany someone in a kind of a band I had been in briefly with a few different people from my church. I don't talk to them anymore. But yeah, I've been in a band for a brief bit. We didn't really have a name. We just get together when we're like off from college or whatever and try to do something together. Maybe we'd play it during the offering portion of the church service.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Is it harder than piano? Different?
It's different from piano, so of course you can't play organ without knowing the keys. But the thing about an organ that makes it a little bit more complex is that there's more stuff going on. There's drawbars, there's pistons, and there's notes you're playing with your feet too.
Yeah.
So
it seems like it's a whole thing.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. It's got a lot more than just a piano going on. But I wasn't doing all of the stuff on the organ. I was doing stuff on keys because I was mainly an accompanist to whoever was leading at that time.
Gotcha.
And use like the volume pedals, like raise me up a little bit here or there. And I still don't know the other settings, the drawbars and pistons. Now, different organs will have a different extent of all the other doohickeys, whatnot.
Yeah,
Some people
they're ridiculous.
Yeah,
I was just looking at one recently, and I was like, "This is just how does somebody even play this? It's so much like stuff."
I can't.
But I guess they kind of set it and forget it. Maybe I don't know.
Experience is how they just know what they like on the different the drawbars or whatever. Like they run across like you hear the clicking. It sounds like it's just like intuitive for them. I guess they just know what they like. But I don't have the hand-foot coordination yet because I haven't played organ that many times to get that.
Yeah, and then there's that too. That's what made me think of. But it was like both of them. That's why I was asking you, because it's like, how hard is that foot to do? Yeah, it's probably takes a lot of practice.
That's why when I was playing that organ that day when I did some jam-ish number with my bandmates, I had to be careful where I place my feet because I couldn't just put them right in front of me like a piano. I had to put them kind of way out, like stretching out, like, because there's like a footrest way up there because you're not going to have your feet just sitting there like you're putting weight on the area below you because you're playing notes if you do that.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense too. It's a whole posture you have to change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting. It's a cool instrument, though. I think the organ might be older than the piano. I'm not sure about that 100%, but I thought I heard that somewhere. No, it might be like... Is it the harpsichord, maybe? The harpsichord might be older than the piano.
Yeah, because the piano had a few forerunners as well. There is the dulcimer, there is the celesta, and the harpsichord as well. And then a piano came around because someone wanted to create an instrument that could play soft and loud. Because on a harpsichord, you only get one volume, one intensity all the way across. No matter how hard a song you play, if you play like or you don't have that kind of nuance with a harpsichord. It's just no matter how intensely you play, it's going to be the same kind of volume. On a piano, someone wanted to create something that could play soft and loud. That's why when it was originally created, it was called a piano forte. Piano, soft, forte, loud. But it's just most widely known as a piano.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
According to ChatGPT, the organ was invented before the piano.
Okay.
It says the earliest known organs, such as the hydraulis, were developed in ancient Greece. Early organs used water pressure to push air through the pipes. This is what I had heard. Yeah, so it was before like electric or whatever they use. Steam. They used steam, I guess, at some point. Forte piano. There you go.
Yep.
Then you're adding in what Andrew was saying. That was not until 1700. Anyway, interesting side tangent.
Thank you.
So you had sent me a video, a YouTube that you wanted to talk about.
Yes.
You want to talk about that?
Yes. So on my channel, there's a video of me playing. Well, it's not really. You don't see my face. It's a video called Self Portrait 25, which is the 25th chapter of my Self Portrait series, and it shows how the genesis of my 68th original was. Because every now and then I might talk about my process, but it's not too often where I show that much of my process. But because in some ways, some of the chapters of my self-portrait series have given birth to some of the originals I've written. And that video, Self-Portrait 25, had this skeleton, had this bass line, and I was like, oh yes, I am so going to use that in something. and eventually that got used in my 68th original, which is titled "We Can't Keep Going On Like This." And even if you dig back further into my history of composing, some other songs have been born out of other chapters of my self-portrait series, as well as in other moments of not expecting to write something, because I've written a few songs from jams I've done with Harrison. So back in 2016, when he and I first met, a few months had passed, we were keeping in touch, and then we're like, hey, let's meet up at your place so we can jam a little bit. We did that, and one thing came about, and we're talking about how we both have an appreciation of avant-garde music too. And one time I just like threw my hands on the keyboard, and then I was like, yeah, like if I just did like blah, 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 and then that could sometimes be avant-garde. And then I was like, you know what, I like that little accidental phrase I created. And then that eventually turned into my original called The Internal Pendulum of Misalignment, which I recorded 2 episodes ago.
Sure.
And another time when I was at his house, we did, it was in May 2017, which is also on my channel. We did a couple keyboard duets, and it was the second duet we did on my YouTube channel. It's called HBATM Part 2. And that thing became used in my, I think it's my 59th original, called Is It Worth It to Go On?
Cool.
So, yeah.
So when you're deciding to repurpose these pieces, how do you think about that? Are you just like do you, because I've done that as well, but there's a fine line between using something too many times and being like Nickelback or whatever, or whoever it is. It Nickelback? Yeah, it's Nickelback that has they have like the same track that they use twice. And then also introducing something that's like, they used the same recording and made up new words for their song. So there's like 2 songs that they have the same music, but they made like 2 different like #1 hits they had. That's the extreme, right? But like, how do you balance like creating a motif for yourself that's kind of like an ATM motif versus something that feels like it's too derivative of something else?
So when it comes to songs that have been born out of various chapters of my self-portrait series, I don't think I have anything where 2 different songs came out of the same chapter. It's more like the chapter gets written, gets recorded, and then later on in time when I might listen to it again, it's like, yeah, I like that phrase right there, and that could be used in something. And that's more like how it goes.
Okay, because the self-portrait is more improvisational.
Yes. Right? Every one of the chapters is a complete improv.
I see. Okay, so this is walking into your songwriting process a little bit. So you'll use the self-portrait as kind of like a staging area where you can improvise, and it's just a little more loose. And then when you go back and listen, you might be like, actually, this is a really cool idea. I'd like to formalize this into something that's more of a piece. So Self-Portrait 25, like you use that as a staging ground, and then you repurpose that, and then you turn it into something more polished, which is your 68th.
And my 68th is, called We Can't Go On. That is...
Cool. So how do you actually do that from a I want to go like into the nitty-gritty of this, right? Like cuz I'm interested in that. So you play the self-portrait, it's improvisational, and then you go back you go back and you listen to it, and how do you actually turn it into something more polished? Do you practice it a bunch of times and kind of see how do you like solidify that arrangement? And for context, this is something I've been struggling with recently in terms of writing guitar parts, especially when they are of course improvisational in nature, but like a solo or a more intricate part of the song. I've struggled to figure out when and how I decide if it's done. You know, if I need to have a version of it that's like, you know, like you have like 68 or whatever.
So when I do each chapter, it's not like I'm setting out trying to create a piece. I don't go into a self-portrait and say, I'm going to write something with this. Sometimes they can be good as standalones. And it's like, wow, I didn't expect this. This sounds pretty good. And it might not always lead to something to be written from that. But sometimes I might like something that's in it that's good enough to be used as something down the road. And because it's chapter 25, that was a case where something did come out of it. So how that happens is like I'm just playing, and then I'm like, this could be something. And then when I go to do it again, by then it's like, okay, I have my backbone, I have my bass. And then as far as what the melody is, I'll just do some random stuff to see what could be usable as a melody that sort of like speaks what I'm kind of thinking of at that moment. And then it's like, okay, I like this, and then this works.
How static do you keep the melody? Do you change it performance to performance, or do you kind of just get something that works and you keep it?
So from each performance thereof, when the song is actually established, when it's actually come into existence.
Yeah, after it's a 68.
Yeah, after it's a 68, each time I perform the song is going to be a little bit different each way. That's just the nature of how jazz is, but even in other genres as well. But like the melody, the melody I do keep pretty consistent. There might be little embellishments here or there, but yes, the melody is consistent. And then, you know, doing my solo section after the melody, and then I get back to the melody to like reestablish the tune and so forth. But yes.
Interesting. This might be... I don't like think of melody, to be honest.
Okay.
It's like a weird thing. I got to think about more melody. Like to go back to, my original thing I was saying.
Mm-hmm.
Just like play. And then I think I'm more of... I just will improv. And then I'm like, how do I play that again? Like, what is the... I'm not good at making a theme, I think. I got to work on that a little bit more.
I think in my case, having a good memory just really helps. Because when playing the 25th, I remembered what I did in the bass. I was like, this is so good. It's so interesting how simple it is. There's not a whole lot to it. It's more like a part of a chord. It's not even a real chord. It's just C sharp, and then G sharp, and then another C sharp. That's what I'm really doing in the bass. And then doing little things here or there, like going down to the D every now and then because it's right next to the C sharp. And yeah, it's not a whole lot there, but a lot can be done with a little bit. It's something so simple, but you can do a lot with it. So I tend to write things that have a lot of space as well. And those have been some of my favorite ones to play because of how spacious it is and how you can do so much with it.
like that too, and it gives you space to improvise, right?
Yeah.
And to change it. It's also really interesting to me to hear that you are starting, like like you were saying, if I got this correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, right? But like, for 25 self-portrait, you liked the bass part, and then you secondarily came up with a melody to go with it, which is actually the opposite of what a lot of lyrical songwriters do. Again, not me. I typically will start with something that is, and I'm a drummer as well, right? So like I'll start with something similar to you, where it's like maybe singing nonsense, or I'll even have like the lyrics or like a plot of a song, and then I'm like it's much more. I'm also an engineer, right? So I'm engineering this whole thing from, kind of the bottom up. But a lot of folks will say that they will hear the melody to a song first, which is funny, because like you're saying, no, I kind of just liked the foundation, and now I'm coming up with a melody secondary. Does that happen to you a lot, or do you do melody work too, melody, and match the melody to other parts of the tune?
Well, most of the time, I am starting from like a ground-up approach. I have the bass first, and then I put something on top of that. Because when it happens the other way around, it's harder. Because there are times when I'll hear something in a dream, and I'll hear the melody. I'm like, oh God, it's a good melody. Well, what am I gonna put underneath that? Because I have something brewing right now, which could be my 73rd original. I have a few things brewing, which who knows, whichever comes first will be the 73rd. But one of them, I heard this melody, and I'm like, what kind of bass am I gonna put under that? What am I going to do? That's kind of frustrating, because those take longer to come out.
Right. I agree. That I suffer with that too. Like, it's like I have some melodies that I've had in my head since I was like in high school. And for me, it's like the bass note for me type of thing is the lyrics, right? Like, it's like a similar thing. It's like, sure, that sounds great, but what are the words that are going to mean that to me? Like, how do I decide that? Or how do I kind of paint this melody into a song? It's like taking it that next step. So this makes sense. And yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, though. I totally understand it from... It seems easier to just build something up. And for you on just keys, right, is the bass, right? If you had drums, too, it's like I always typically start recording. I write my songs just on acoustic guitar, but I start recording with the drums. Like, I don't like record the melody first.
Shatter the Glass took me about 2 years to write.
Interesting.
Yeah, that came to me in pieces.
The melody for that first.
Yeah, I heard the melody kind of in a dream, and then after a while, I was like, okay, what key is this in? And then thought about that, and then I was like, what chords, like what kind of bass rhythm would work under this thing? And then I was like, okay, yeah, there it is. It came to me in pieces over like a 2-year period, and then I finally got it.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a long time for a song. But it is a very memorable melody. I can like almost sing it now. I can't quite. But if we sat here for a few minutes, I'd actually be able to pull it up from my brain. Yes, yeah. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I was like, it's right on, like, I can almost hear it. Yep, exactly. And that's a melody worth writing around, right? Because it's something you can remember. But I get it. I get the sentiment when somebody says that they hear these melodies and they write their songs around them. Makes sense. It's just, it's hard.
Because that one that's brewing in my head that I don't know what to do with right now, I remember texting that to a friend because I had it on my voice memos app. And then he was like, finish that idea! I was like, yeah, I know, but I don't know how long it's going to take.
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's almost like you need to just have somebody else almost play it.
Yes!
Well, you can't, because you want to play the melody, you know? Like, you need to have another hand going, too.
Yeah, if only had a third
like,
and
it's
a
like
fourth
at the very
hand.
least. Yeah,
Or
Machamp style.
Yes.
Yo, Machamp would be a great piano player. I can't believe anybody ever hasn't done that meme. Anyway, what else is up? In the Dark?
Yes, In the Dark. That was all began one day. I was just sitting at home. I was like, it's nighttime. What did I try to play some piano in the dark? And then I was like, this is pretty cool. So I kept it up. So it began on my previous keyboard, RIP, my Yamaha YPG 635. It was born on July 12th of 2000 and, oh shoot, it was before my 19th birthday. And then I had it up until December 31st, 2020. And then as I was, so the first 2 chapters, I believe, of In the Dark were recorded on that. And then when I got a new keyboard in 2021, that's when In the Dark 3 first was recorded on that one. And then every other chapter thenceforth, my Yamaha MX88.
Yeah. Nice. Why don't you play us something else?
And especially since I was talking about process and whatnot, and how sometimes I'll just improvise something to try to generate something. I can even do that right now, so you can see what develops out of that.
Do it.
Yes, I will.
Yeah, let's see.
Thanks.
I dig it. If you had to name it, what would you name it? Is that the hard part for you?
Sometimes and sometimes not. It's more like when I sit there and marinate with it a little more, that's when I sort of might get a title out of that, but who knows?
Yeah. No, I feel you. I dig it. Like, it's fun to come up with these little, like, I love improving. Like, I think it's fun to see what these pieces are, and I heard for sure that bass motif that I guess it is sort of like a melody, but it's not the main thing, right? Like, it's...
There's some things that you sort of like keep going back to because it's like a familiar bass line or motif that comes up when you play other songs or your other solo improv moments. And then it's like when something keeps coming to you, it's like, look at that pattern. It wants to be something. Because I've had some of those that have followed me for years, and then it's like, I want to do something with it, but I don't know what it's going to be. And then 71, 72 came about. That took like 10 years or whatever, but yeah, it's like, it's been with me for a while, I just didn't know what I was going to do with it.
Has it gotten harder for you to come up with new things as you write more songs? Because, have we talked about this before?
I don't think so.
No.
Has it gotten harder for me to write new songs? The more I've gotten, the more I've written.
Because your bar changes, like you're like, all right, I already have 50, so like 51, like you're going to work harder on it, right?
Well,
at least for me, that I've noticed that.
I don't think it's gotten harder for me as I've written more songs. It's more like, if it's just a particular moment where something new just hasn't come about in a while, it's more like, okay, how do I create something new? Because right now it's sort of like a little bit of a writer's block going on, but it's not like I'm totally shut down, because who knows, the next one might come in tomorrow or in a few months.
Yeah, this is true. Sometimes those, I don't know, I feel like the ones that are hard for me pave way for a bunch of ones that are easy. But like the hard ones are harder and harder and harder and harder. And I've turned off my faucet for a while because I know I don't have enough time to record all of my songs. So I'm just like, I don't want any more right now. I don't want to have to like have this stockpile. Or I don't think I think I would have it if I'm open to it, but since I have a stockpile of like 13 songs right now, like it's like it turns itself off for me. Like it's like unless I record those, they're like I'm not going to really write anything unless it's like miraculously something great. Perhaps that's why I'm speaking from this perspective instead of through 50. It might just be that I'm backlogged and it's like I have no need to write. But that's not true. No, I stand by what I said. For me, it's difficult, it's difficult to write the next song after a previous one that's really good, because I'm like, oh, that was really good. Now that's like sets the bar, and some ones that I wrote before kind of I don't respect as much, even though I do, because they're like a point in time. But then it's like moving forward, I want them all to be at this level kind of thing. I'm going to just filter out. It's like the ones I'm throwing out almost now would have been my best one 3 years ago.
I try not to see it as like musically competing with myself. It's like, let's see if I can top that. I don't have that mentality when I compose. I mean, even when it's like something that's like really, really good or whatever. I mean, I'm proud of everything I've written actually, but it's not like when I finish something that's like really complex or whatever, it's like, okay, whatever I write after this has to be better than that, better than that, better. Like, I mean, I always of course want to grow, but let's say if I've written something that's like grand and big and complex, the next one after that, I'm not thinking I need to beat what I did last time. It's just another one that comes out, and of course I want everything I do to be good and something that I can still continue to be proud of years down the line, because that's kind of what I meant when I was talking about something being timeless, as I referred to in a previous episode. Because I don't want to write something that after some years pass, I'm like, okay, I wrote that when I was like at this state of my growth or whatever, and I don't like that anymore. So, because if I get into that, then I'm going to want to go back and say, okay, strike that from the list, strike that from the list, whatever. Because I always try to think about the long term with stuff that I write. Because that's why even when I'll have some idea in my mind of like something to potentially create, some things I don't allow to exist. Some things I will not let see the light of day. There's some things I will not go ahead and write. Just because I might have an idea doesn't mean it has to exist. I'm not the kind to throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. I don't have to just try any and everything just to see if it is going to work. There's some things you should already know without having to try it if it's going to be good for you, if it's going to go well or not. If you know enough about like noticing patterns, or if you know yourself well enough, then you can just be an observer instead of just trying it out and say, oh yeah, I can see how that thing is, and it's not going to work out well down the line or whatever.
This is true. And like, I think that it's not that as much that I think the way I put it asks that, but I'm more interested in like, how do you decide, how do you push yourself to be changing your like style and
keeping an open mind.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
How do you not write the same? Because that's what ends up happening for me.
Right.
Like, I'm like, all right, I have these songs. Like, I need to change. And some folks don't, right? But I just happen to know that you kind of do, right? But like, how do you get? You have to kind of monitor that change a little bit, and maybe that's what you're saying, right?
A little
it's
bit.
Like, I don't have to entertain that, you know.
So what I do is a combination of things. One, keeping an open mind first and foremost. Two, if I notice that I've since sort of written a bunch of songs in this same key, then it's like, okay, I want to not write so much in that key. I want to try another key every now and then. Because early on in my composing, I was doing a bunch of things in F sharp minor because I tend to really like that key. But after a while, I was like, okay, let's try something that's in another key. Let's not go to the same road over and over and over again, because then I'll be looked at as a rather derivative composer. Because some would say Vivaldi was like that in the sense that once you've heard one, you've heard them all. I'm not going to be that guy. So
that's what I'm getting at, right? Like, and it's like you could do that, but like to grow, when you're maybe Vivaldi did. I'm not as familiar with his like catalog, right? But when you have 72 songs or 60, you know, whatever, odd songs, like at a certain point, that's what I mean. It's like when we're going to name the next one at a certain, like when you have 50, like if you're like, all right, like now 51, like that one sounds like that one. So like it gets harder when you have more because you already have songs that sound like that. You know what I mean?
But at the same time, if you know that the song has some particular changes or some other uniquenesses about it, then you don't have to worry about that as much. Because I have some songs that are not in 4/4. Some things are in odd time signatures. And some things change time signatures within it. And I have some songs that might go up into a different key. For example, Acknowledgement of Reality Part 1 and 2, which is my 71st and 72nd original. That one starts off in E minor, and then at some point it changes to C minor.
Right. Okay. This is cool. So you're using key changes, musical. You're using music. The theory utility to make sure that you're keeping yourself unique. Which kind of segues into I gotta go to sleep soon. I'm getting steamed out. For the listeners, it's gonna be nice and clean and pretty, but if you got to this point now, I'll let you in on a dirty secret that this episode had some audio problems, so Andrew and I had to switch around a bunch. There were sound checks, etc. So it's later than normal. But one question that I really have been meaning to ask you the whole episode, but then I forget, which is, if someone is interested in... So you sit in an interesting seat in terms of the folks that have been on the podcast, right? Because you're one of the, if not the only, I don't know if there's been anyone else that's besides Evan McClosey, who's been on the episode with you, that's been fully instrumental composer.
Yeah.
When someone is interested, if there's someone out there, and it doesn't have to be, let's just use me as an example, right? Like if I want to go from writing traditional songs with lyrics and guitar or whatever, and I just want to go and create my own instrumental pieces, what wisdom through these half a 3/4 of 100 songs that you've written can you impart onto me? What advice do you have to give for someone who is musically talented enough to do it, but might not be in the headspace to actually execute on creating these musical pieces, instrumental pieces?
Never thought of this before, because
me neither. I thought of it before though, and I was like, this is the question, right?
Because I don't see it as like this particular specialized skill set that I'm able to just compose all these instrumental pieces or whatever. It's just what I
know. What it is though, right? Because there's not, you're limited in a sense, because you're not connecting to your audience with word, right?
In that sense,
you're using there's a huge difference.
There's a huge difference.
Like even when we look at Harrison's compilation, right? Like I think that's what made me start to realize this, because it's like, of course, Shatter the Glass feeds into this, and of course the piece fits, but there's a huge, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, right? But like, there's a huge equity that's put at stake on naming your songs that doesn't happen for somebody that uses lyrics, because you have to match that name to the expression.
Yes.
And you have to, you're doing that after the fact. Usually, you're like
sometimes
coming up with this expression, or before the fact, right? And it's leading into it. So that could be one of these tips, right? It could be have some words and match it to it, right? But like, either way, you have your title, but then besides the title, someone should still feel it without the title.
Exactly.
Without that, right?
And they usually do. I mean, I don't think I've had the experience yet, like such a stark contrast between the title and what I play, because after all, I mean, I'm always cognizant of that. So maybe the thing is, if you were to write an instrumental piece, think of like, so let's say you're coming up with it by just solo improv, and then you're trying to find out, what's this going to be about? Or what were you feeling at the time, what were you thinking of at the time that brought it into existence? And then think of like the mood of the piece. Think of other various aspects about the piece, and then see what it brings to mind. What are you thinking about? What are you feeling? And then after a while, a title might come through. Or you can have it happen the other way around, where you may have seen or heard a phrase or a word or whatever that just speaks to you in some kind of way, and then come to your instrument with that sort of thought in mind, like, oh, I just heard this really interesting saying or this word or phrase, and then what does that make you want to play? You know, like, you have to really like dig into yourself in that kind of way.
Yeah, and I wonder if your experience even, and I don't know if this is for everyone, right? Like, it could be for just you and like Dizzy Gillespie, right? But I'm sure it's not just you two, you know. But like, does church have an element of influence on that too? Because when you hear church music, you don't have to hear any words with it. You know, there's something like higher order just from hearing those melodies that have been constructed. And for the listener, and I know Andrew obviously knows this, right? But like, for the listener that might not be aware of this, I'll just give you a little bit, one little tad of music history just to recall that most of Western music was funded by the church, right? So we're talking about like this was like an intentional sort of thing that happened, but there is emotion, I guess, involved in that, right?
Oh yeah,
like,
there's. I mean, everything I write is about either something I've experienced, something that's happened to me, something I've thought about, or something else that's resonated with me in some kind of way. Since we asked about the church, yes, the church has had some influence in my songwriting because, for example, I have a song called "Blinded by Eyesight." That phrase right there didn't come to mind until one sermon my previous pastor, who retired actually, he's pastor emeritus now, preached a sermon called "More Than What We See," and it's about the idea of you have to see more than what you see. Don't let what meets the eye be all that there is to a situation. Eyesight and vision are two different things. So one can lack the use of their eyes. One can be blind as far as how the function of their eyes, but still have vision. They can see beyond what they see. So those that don't get that, and those who are too quick to dismiss something because it's beyond their comprehension, or just because they can't see it, or because they can't explain it, are blinded by eyesight. Now, that's not a phrase that my pastor himself used, but he had said at some point, don't let eyesight blind you to insight. So that kind of thing did something to me, and I'm like, yeah, I need to write something about that. But even way before then, as far as the influence of church in my playing and writing, is, you can see like how the choir director, the minister of music, is like directing the choir, like giving various cues here or there, like hand signals or telling them to repeat this, that, and the other. There's that improvisatory element that comes out when the choir is doing their thing. You just watch how the interplay is between the minister of music and the choir. There's signals he has, might go to the head, the melody, or this means repeat, or he'll point to the altos, point to the sopranos, point to the tenors, or the basses, or whatever. You do this part. Sometimes they'll do like a harmony, like he'll raise 3 fingers to say harmony, all 3 parts, or there could be a 4th part, but that is my assistant minister of music's signal for harmony, where there's 3 or 4 parts, because sometimes there are basses in there too. You look at that rapport going on, and although a song may be written a certain way, it has that way about it of you being able to improvise in the sense of like you can do this section again or repeat that, or you can vamp over a certain section because I've seen that interplay over my whole life because I grew up in the church, and me being a musician, I always had a keen eye for that. So of course, like this song was done this way that day, and then it's done another way some other day, and they're not done the exact same way. Sometimes they're not even done the same key. But even if they are done the same key on a few different days, they're being presented a different way. Sometimes they might have the tenors do that a few times, or they'll have the altos and sopranos do something else, or they'll have a certain part repeated a few times because they just like that part or whatever. And yeah,
this makes sense. Like, totally. And okay, so one other way I want to try to tap your brain and see if I can get shake any wisdom out of you.
Yeah.
Right. So like, I get all this. That makes total sense to me. Even times as in my youth when I was practicing doing like little children's choirs and stuff with the church, I've noticed similar things. Maybe I haven't paid attention to it until you just say it now, said it now, but I get what you're saying. And okay, so taking all of that, you're approaching the keyboard and your composition with that frame of mind. When you so another piece of experience that you have is that you go to a ton of open mic nights, right? And you listen to a lot of solo performers that aren't playing instrumental music. What gets where do you think that so you have the limitation of not having lyrics in your songs, but that becomes like an advantage in terms of like you have to play more interesting stuff, right? But then like your crutch ends up being that you don't have to worry about the words, right? So you have less to focus on in some degree, but not really, because you're playing more intricate things, right? But for let's flip it, right? So if it's just somebody playing acoustic guitar, if it's just me, but like I haven't gone to open mic nights as much recently, but you do go to a lot of them. Where do you see, like, what's the low-hanging fruit, if anyone is listening, that is like an acoustic player that sings songs that doesn't play instrumental pieces? Like, what piece of your approach could they take that would up their game? Because I'm sure there's things when you're sitting there where you're like, if this person just did this, like, this is something I do, they could easily do this, and it would bring them up to the next level.
Wow. I wonder what to say about that, because like it's not something.
I mean, it might be too late, and we might cut this out. That's fine. I might be pushing you too hard.
No. I mean, it's something I would like to be able to answer. It's like,
it's a good question,
right? Because it's. I mean, I guess part of the difficulty is like I feel like it's comparing apples and oranges. Me as an instrumentalist and as a lyricist.
That's why.
Yeah.
Right, because they're playing music. Right. Like and one of the reasons somebody like Mississippi John Hurt, who I don't know if you're really familiar with or not, because I know you don't even play guitar, but one of the things that is so interesting about someone like that, you could also use somebody like Fats Waller, right, as a similar example, where when he has instrumentals, sure, like I love his instrumentals, like Viper Drag and like all these different things, but like he also sings. But when he's singing, he's playing as like there's interesting instrumentation going on too at the same time, and I don't know if that's always happening with songwriters, right? Like it seems almost like there might be times where that's neglected, and the song might not even feel complete from a musical standpoint. Like if it was just you'd just be starting with the chords, right? But for an acoustic player, when you have the crutch of the lyrics, you're not like that might be it for the music. You might just come up with the chords and you're done, you know. So that's what I'm wondering. Like, is there a mentality that could be taken out of that?
A little bit, because when you're a lyricist, and if you're accompanying yourself on your instrument, there's a different way that you have to play versus when you're an instrumentalist. So me being an instrumentalist, there's different ways I have to sort of like morph myself to fit this situation when I'm playing with other people. Because if I'm playing with another person, of course, you have to take care to not drown the other out. And there's differences between how you play as an accompanist versus lead. Because when you're solo, you can do the whole thing. You don't have to worry about drowning anybody else out because it's just you. But if you're playing with like a bassist, for example, you don't have to do as much left hand. I don't have to do as much left hand. Let them take care of some of that, and I'll just be playing some chords. And I have to go up a little bit so that I'm not going too thick. But there's sometimes for some settings when playing with a bassist, when I might want to add some thickness to that by letting them do their thing on bass and then me doing my left hand stuff. Or if I'm playing with a guitarist, which is kind of like a lead instrument in a similar way to like how a horn might be. There's some ways I'll just be doing some bass stuff, and then I might be doing the melody, and then the saxophone, some of the horn player could be just doing maybe solos, or maybe join me for a little bit of the melody, but that'll be different based on how we arrange to do it. Because I've had Harrison play with me a few times, and sometimes he's been like an accompanist role with me. He'll add some little lines here that even as I'm playing the melody sometimes, or if I point to him, solos, and then it's back to me again. He just has this way of like streaming through, even when I'm playing the melody or whatever, that is pretty good accompanying. But when I'm playing with a guitar, it's like Evan, for example, because he's a whole band in one, but we know how to work out the way of like playing in and out of each other. Because I've done bass along with him, and he knows how to like go up where I'm not like so I'm not like trying him out either, and stuff like that. But yeah, to get back to your question, yeah, it's like knowing how to play with people and knowing those differences, those nuances about when you are singing and playing, how those changes happen. Because if let's say if I were to do the crazy stupid thing of singing, because I cannot sing, I would have to play a little bit differently than how I would solo, because I can't just sing and play the melody my right hand, because there needs to be something different there. I have to transfer to the accompanist role with my hands and let my voice take care of the melody. But since I don't sing,
I think what I'm asking is actually this all makes sense, right? But like, and I'm like learning as we're talking through this. I'm using you in coding. We call it rubber ducking. You ever hear that term before?
I think I have.
It's like you're talking to a rubber duck, but you're coming up with the answer yourself. I feel like I'm rubber ducking right now, but it's fine. But what you're saying, I think the opposite actually is also valid advice, right? Because, and I don't know if you hear this or not when you're listening to folks, but like for myself, what I'm learning is from this conversation is that I think when I'm going into an instrumental part of my lyric-based song, I don't do that. Like, it's turned off, but I need to actually turn it up in the other direction when I'm going into the instrumental. I need to have a sense of the, like I told you, I don't even think about the melody. I need to know there is a melody, right? But like, I need to know that melody on my instrument, and I need to figure out how to like play that in an improvisational way, and then pull it back. Like those crescendos right on each side, or the decrescendo, are actually pretty important for for upping the piece. Yeah, for me. Anyway, we've been rambling for quite a while. And,
I hope I actually answered your question, because I was like, I wonder what to say about that, because I've never thought of myself as like...
No. There was no answer. That was... I just...
A thought exploration, yeah.
What's up with you, Andrew? What should people be checking out? Always your YouTube.
Yep.
That's home base, right?
Yep. The YouTube is where I post my music. And then, of course, occasionally checking me out here on your podcast. I'm not on social media, other than the YouTube, but yep.
I just set up a YouTube now. Did I add you? I might have. I'm not
sure.
Oh,
you just set
up.
These
videos are going up on YouTube, and it's exciting.
What's your channel?
The Rich Soni Podcast. Yeah. So I'm going to start posting on there. And maybe you'll be one of the ones that we do, like, the backfill video, because you have a YouTube presence, you know? But anyway, yeah, folks, check out Andrew, and I'll put links in the description. Thanks for listening, and thanks for always coming on and entertaining me, Andrew.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. And we'll talk to you next time.
Next time.